Europe is a vast continent, home to countless peoples and cultures that have shaped the history of humanity. But have you ever wondered what the true origin of the European peoples is? What if I told you that the Holy Scriptures hold clues about this lineage, that there is a hidden ancestral connection between the Europeans and the biblical accounts? In this video, we will delve into the deep roots of Europe to reveal the hidden origin of the white peoples according to the Bible. Get ready for a surprising journey through the Scriptures and forgotten history. Stay with us and discover secrets that might change your perception of the past. The hidden origin of Europeans according to the Bible. Europe is a vast continent composed of numerous countries, each with its own culture and history. Among them we find Germany, Austria, Poland, Hungary, France, Italy, Romania, and many others. But have you heard that the Holy Scriptures reference the origins of the European peoples? The Bible mentions nations that gave rise to the peoples of Europe, naming them after their ancestors. In the book of Genesis chapter 10, we find genealogical records pointing to the ancestors of various civilizations. For those who interpret biblical texts considering their symbolism and historical depth, the Scriptures reveal fascinating details about the origins of different peoples and nations. Among these peoples are the Greeks and Macedonians, who are mentioned in the Bible as direct descendants of Japheth, one of Noah's sons. Through ancient genealogies and traditional Jewish interpretations, we know that Japheth is considered the primordial ancestor of Europeans. Just as Javan, one of Japheth's sons, is identified as the progenitor of the Greeks, other branches of Japheth are believed to have given rise to various nations on the European continent. This knowledge, preserved through the centuries, reinforces the idea that biblical traditions and historical accounts intertwine, offering a unique view of the origin of the European peoples and their connection to humanity's distant past. The name Japheth carries a profound meaning. Traditionally, it is interpreted as beautiful or pale, but its meaning may also be connected to the idea of expansion or multiplication. This makes sense when we observe how European peoples expanded throughout history, colonizing lands and influencing civilizations in different parts of the world. In biblical tradition, the European peoples are called Japhethites, as they are direct descendants of Japheth, Noah's son. However, it is not only in the Bible that we find this designation. Linguistically, Japheth's influence extends beyond the religious realm. The Indo-European language family, which includes languages such as English, German, Russian, Ukrainian, French, Spanish, and many other European languages, is also referred to as the Japhethite language family. This naming refers to the biblical ancestor of the European peoples, reinforcing the connection between biblical genealogy and the formation of Western civilizations. This relationship between linguistics and biblical tradition demonstrates that the cultural and historical traits of European peoples were not only recorded in sacred texts, but also left deep marks on how languages and identities were shaped over the centuries. The Holy Scriptures mention the progenitors of the European peoples in chapter 10 of the book of Genesis and also in the book of Chronicles. In these passages, we find Japheth's lineage, which includes his 7 sons and grandsons. Through the names of these descendants, it is possible to trace the origins of the ancient Europeans. In antiquity, the Israelites themselves referred to the European peoples as Japhethites, and in some cases as Javanites, especially when referring to the inhabitants of the region of Greece, who were called the children of Javan. In the book of Genesis, the descendants of Japheth are mentioned by name. His sons were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. The sons of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah, while the descendants of Javan included Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. An interesting point is the biblical identification of Ashkenaz as the ancestor of the Germanic peoples. This association has endured to this day and is recognized within Jewish tradition, with Ashkenazi Jews serving as an example of this historical heritage. The connection between the biblical narrative and the formation of European peoples offers a fascinating perspective on how the ancient Hebrews interpreted genealogy and the distribution of nations. As is widely known, Ashkenazi Jews refer to the regions of Germany and other areas inhabited by Germanic peoples as Ashkenaz. This designation originates from ancient Jewish tradition and the biblical worldview, according to which Ashkenaz is considered the ancestor of the Germanic peoples, including the Germans themselves. Furthermore, Ashkenaz is also identified as the patriarch of the Scandinavian populations and other Germanic groups. In parallel, there is also a biblical figure named Riphath. According to ancient interpretations, the Irish people, direct descendants of the Celts, had a consensus about their biblical ancestry. For them, Riphath would be the ancestor of the Celtic peoples. Riphath was the son of Gomer and the grandson of Japheth, and thus is recognized as the progenitor of the Celtic tribes scattered across Europe. Besides Riphath's descendants, we find other sons of Japheth, often associated with European peoples or populations genetically linked to Europeans. A notable example is Madai, mentioned in the biblical text. His identification refers to one of the nations descended from Japheth, and he is widely interpreted as the ancestor of the peoples who migrated to the region of present-day Iran, known as the Aryan or Iranian peoples, biblically referred to as the Madaites. Among these peoples, the Medo-Persians stand out, whose name resembles that of Madai. This reinforces the idea that Madai was the progenitor of the Madaiti tribes, which gave rise to the Medes, Persians, Parthians, and other groups from ancient Persia. Another set of names that stands out in Genesis 10:2 includes Magog, Tubal, and Meshech. But who were these characters? Tubal and Meshech are identified as the ancestors of the Slavic peoples, including Russians and Ukrainians. This interpretation is based on the relationship between these biblical names and the historical origin of the peoples in the region. According to many scholars of biblical genealogies and the formation of nations, Russia and Ukraine would be the land of Gog and Magog, as Tubal and Meshech are frequently identified as the progenitors of these peoples. It is essential to understand who is who in the book of Revelation and other apocalyptic prophecies in the Bible, such as those contained in the Old Testament books of Daniel, Ezekiel, Isaiah, among others. Knowledge about the peoples mentioned and the identity of their ancestors is crucial for correctly interpreting these passages. For example, Magog, Tubal, and Meshech are identified as the biblical ancestors of the Slavic peoples. Similarly, Ashkenaz is pointed out as the patriarch of the Germanic peoples. However, it is important not to confuse the Germanic peoples with the Slavic ones, as they are distinct groups, although all are genetically related as European peoples. Another highly relevant biblical character is Tarshish, one of Japheth's sons. According to historical and genealogical interpretations, Tarshish is considered the ancestor of the Etruscans, a people who played a significant role in shaping the identity of the ancient Italians and Romans. While the Romans were not exclusively descendants of the Etruscans, the Etruscan heritage had a significant influence on their genetic and cultural composition. Additionally, the Romans also had Javanic ancestry, descending from Javan, another son of Japheth. This study of the biblical origins of European peoples helps to better understand their historical and cultural connections, providing a broader view of the formation of ancient civilizations. A fascinating curiosity about Javan, son of Japheth, is that he was not only the ancestor of the Greeks, but also of peoples who, though not Greeks per se, were closely related to them. These groups share historical and cultural roots, paralleling the Greeks in antiquity. Another interesting point is that the names of Japheth's descendants gave rise to many nations of antiquity, and many of these names have linguistic variations across different languages, such as Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic. This similarity between names is the result of linguistic adaptation over time, influenced by the dispersion of peoples after the Tower of Babel incident. According to biblical tradition, linguistic diversity arose as a consequence of human wickedness, interrupting the unity of the original language, sometimes called the Adamite language. From this division, countless languages and dialects emerged, shaping the world as we know it today. Among the sons of Javan, one prominent name is Elisha or Elisha, identified as the ancestor of the Hellenes, Hellenes in Greek. The Hellenes were the peoples who gave rise to Greek identity in ancient times. Therefore, Elisha, the grandson of Japheth, is often pointed out as one of the progenitors of the first Greeks, the so-called original Greeks. Another descendant of Javan that sparks great interest in the scriptures is Tarshish, frequently mentioned in sacred passages. Considered the ancestor of the Tartessians, Tarshish is associated with a people who occupied the Iberian peninsula in ancient times. The Tartessians are recognized as the first known inhabitants of the region, suggesting that the Portuguese and Spanish peoples have, in part, their origins linked to Tarshish. Although the Portuguese have other Japhethite influences, as well as a significant Semitic ancestry, their genealogy, according to biblical tradition, also traces back to Tarshish, reflecting the diverse roots that formed the present-day people. Furthermore, the cultural and historical presence left by the Tartessians in the Iberian Peninsula remains the subject of study and fascinating archaeological discoveries. Another notable descendant of Javan is Kittim, often associated with the island of Cyprus. The ancient inhabitants of this island, known as Cypriots, are traditionally considered descendants of Kittim, which reinforces the historical and cultural connection between the people of Cyprus and Javan's lineage. On the other hand, Javan's fourth son, named Dodanim, is a figure that generates some controversy among scholars. Many believe there was a transcription error suggesting the original name should have been Rodanim. This linguistic variation could point to a connection with the Dardanians, an ancient Trojan people. Thus, this theory raises the possibility that the ancient Trojans, famous for their role in the Trojan War, could be direct descendants of Javan, further expanding the potential branches of his lineage in ancient history. Biblical genealogy and its historical interconnections are vast and full of intriguing details, offering fertile ground for various analyses on the origins of peoples. However, to avoid prolonging the topic too much, it is important to highlight one essential point. European peoples have their roots directly linked to Japheth, being therefore classified as Japhethites. This lineage not only connects Europeans to the ancient biblical accounts, but also suggests a deep link between modern civilizations and the peoples of antiquity, highlighting the rich influences that shape today's cultures. May God bless everyone, and see you soon.